welcome to this deep dive. You are probably producing more work right now than you ever have in your entire life. So why does it feel like you are just completely standing still?
Right. It's a bizarre feeling.
It really is. Like, think about it. You're hitting publish more often, sending out more strategic emails. You're generating entirely new project outlines in a fraction of the time it used to take. And by every external metric, your workflow looks incredibly productive, like almost superhuman.
Yeah, totally superhuman.
But if we're being completely honest, beneath that surface level velocity, there is this pervasive, incredibly uncomfortable feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a feeling that nothing is actually moving forward clearly or decisively.
And today we were doing a deep dive into the quiet, almost invisible trade we all made with artificial intelligence and why that trade is secretly exhausting us.
It's a profound shared exhaustion. And I think it's one that people rarely articulate in professional settings because they feel like they're supposed to be celebrating this massive technological leap,
Sure.
Right, like you're supposed to be grateful for it.
Exactly. Because when you look at the history of automation, it usually provides this clean, binary sense of relief. Like, when the word processor replaced the typewriter,
Oh, yeah.
the relief was immediate. You didn't have to retype an entire page because of a single typo.
The whiteout days.
Right, exactly. It was a one-to-one exchange of mechanical friction for free time. But what we are experiencing right now with generative AI is fundamentally different.
How so?
Well, we didn't just automate a mechanical task, we automated a cognitive process. And the resulting exhaustion is the part of the shift that nobody is explaining properly.
I mean, that distinction between mechanical friction and cognitive friction feels completely central to this entire problem.
It really is.
Because my experience, and honestly, the experience of almost everyone I talk to right now, is like running on a treadmill that someone has cranked up to the absolute maximum speed.
Yes, the perfect analogy.
You're moving your legs faster than you ever thought possible. You're doing all the physical mechanics of running,
Yeah.
right? The generating, the structuring, the outputting.
All the motion.
All the motions. But you look up, and the scenery hasn't changed. You are in the exact same spot.
Yeah.
It creates this intense cognitive dissonance. The speed is undeniably there, but it feels like you're running in quicksand. Why does it feel like that?
Well, that treadmill analogy perfectly isolates the mechanics of the situation because on a treadmill, the machine dictates the pace, right? And the runner merely reacts to keep from falling off.
You're just trying to keep up.
Exactly. And that brings us to the core of what our sources identify as the hidden shift in modern knowledge work. AI promised us immense leverage. It promised to take the heavy lifting out of our daily tasks. And on the surface, it delivered that leverage by providing unprecedented speed.
It's so fast.
It is. But the hidden cost, the quiet trade that slipped into our routines completely unnoticed, is that speed ended up replacing verification.
Wow, speed replaced verification.
Right. We fundamentally shifted our relationship with our own ideas. We stopped building them from the ground up, and instead we transitioned into merely approving them.
We stopped building ideas and started improving them. When I look at my own day-to-day routine, I can see exactly where that transition happened.
It's everywhere once you see it.
It really is.
Yeah.
The entry point of my work has completely relocated. It used to be that if I needed to, say, draft a new initiative or solve a structural problem, my starting point was a blank document.
The dreaded blinking cursor.
Yes. And there is a very specific, heavy psychological weight to a blank page. It forces you to construct. But now, the starting point is almost always a fully generated output.
Which completely rewires the cognitive sequence.
How does it rewire it?
Well, when you start with a blank page, you are forced to engage in schema building. Your brain has to lay a foundation, establish the parameters of the problem, and actively connect disparate pieces of information.
Like connecting the dots.
Exactly. You have to ask yourself, what is the very first logical step here? And then, does step 2 logically follow step 1?
Right, you're building the bridge as you walk on it.
And that process creates immense cognitive friction. It is difficult, it is slow, and it is frequently frustrating. But that friction is not a barrier to the work.
It isn't.
No, that friction is the work. It is the mechanism by which you internalize the logic of the concept. By the time you finish writing a strategy from a blank page, you own it because your brain forged every single link in the chain.
I see. You know where the load-bearing walls are because you hammered the nails yourself.
Exactly. Beautiful way to put it.
But contrast that with the experience of opening a prompt window today. You type in a brief set of instructions, And in perhaps 3 seconds, a highly structured, perfectly formatted, incredibly confident-sounding document appears.
3 seconds is all it takes.
It has bold headers, it has bullet points, it has an executive summary. The dopamine hit in that first 3 seconds is undeniable.
Oh, it feels amazing.
It feels like a massive victory because you feel like you just bypassed all that grueling construction work we were just talking about.
You bypass the construction, yes, but you also bypass the comprehension.
Oh, that's a really important point.
Because when you generate an idea instantly through a large language model, your brain's primary job shifts from active construction to passive reaction. You are no longer the architect.
What are you then?
You are the consumer of the text. And here is where the architecture of the technology itself becomes highly relevant. These models are designed to be statistically predictive.
Right, predicting the next word.
Right. They do not possess an understanding of truth, context, or the nuanced reality of your specific business environment. They operate by predicting the next most mathematically probable word based on vast training data sets.
Which means they kind of gravitate toward the middle.
Exactly. They naturally gravitate toward the center of the bell curve. They produce the most average, generic, broadly acceptable representation of an idea.
Which means when I am looking at that beautifully formatted output, I am essentially looking at a composite sketch of what an average strategy looks like, not a custom-built solution for my actual problem.
That's precisely what it is, a composite sketch.
And this brings us right to the productivity paradox that the sources highlight. Because that initial dopamine hit, the thrill of getting a 5-page document in 3 seconds, it evaporates almost immediately.
It really does.
Because you realize you can't just send this generic composite sketch to your team or your client, so you start editing.
And that editing process is where the illusion of speed violently crashes into reality.
Yeah.
The paradox is that the initial burst of efficiency actually creates an immense tail of hidden rework.
Hidden rework. I love that term.
People find themselves spending hours adjusting the logic of the AI's output, trying to contort a generic structure to fit their highly specific reality.
But let me push on that a bit. Because even with the rework, I feel like a lot of people would argue that having a rough draft to tweak is still vastly superior to staring at that blinking cursor on a blank page.
Sure, people say that all the time.
Right. The conventional wisdom is that it's always easier to edit than to write.
That is a very common assumption, but we have to dissect what the word editing actually means in these two different contexts.
Okay, let's break that down.
When you write a rough draft yourself, your editing process is an act of refinement. You are polishing the surface, fixing a clumsy transition, strengthening a verb, maybe clarifying a point.
Right, because you already know what you're trying to say.
Exactly. You already know the foundational logic is sound because it came from your own situational awareness. But when you are editing a machine's probabilistic output, you are not refining.
What am I doing?
You are engaging in a constant draining battle of cognitive misalignment.
A battle of misalignment. Because the AI doesn't know my constraints.
Precisely. The model does not know that your engineering team is backlogged for 3 months. It doesn't know that your biggest client is highly sensitive to certain pricing models.
It has no idea about office politics or budget cuts.
Nothing. It just knows what words statistically cluster together when discussing growth strategies. So when you edit AI output, you aren't just hunting for typos.
Right.
You are hunting for invisible, embedded assumptions that fundamentally contradict your reality.
That is so true.
You are constantly asking, why did it group these two ideas together? And does this actually make sense for us, or does it just sound like it makes sense?
You have transformed from a generative creator into a forensic auditor.
A forensic auditor of a highly persuasive, confident liar.
Oh man, that forensic auditing is exactly what drains the energy. It's an entirely different kind of fatigue.
It's exhausting.
If I build a project plan myself, I might be tired at the end of the day, but it's a satisfied, productive exhaustion.
You accomplished something.
Right. But when I spend 4 hours trying to untangle and correct an AI's hallucinated assumptions, I am depleted, irritated, and I still don't fully trust the final document. The technology didn't eliminate the work. It just shoved the work to the back end.
And the work it shoved to the back end is a type of work the human brain finds uniquely taxing.
Yeah, no kidding.
Which leads us directly into what the source material defines as the compression gap.
The compression gap. Let's get into this because this concept feels vital for understanding why modern organizational structures feel so fragile right now.
It really is.
There is a dominant narrative in the tech industry right now, you see it everywhere, that claims one person armed with the right AI tools can do the work of an entire team.
Yes, the one-person powerhouse narrative.
Exactly. You see founders boasting that they don't need to hire a marketing department, a strategy team, and a copywriting team because they can just do it all themselves over the weekend with an LLM.
And technically, the raw volume of text they can generate supports that claim.
Right, one person can push a button and produce the word count of 3 specialists.
They can produce the output of 3 specialists, yes. But here is the critical flaw in that narrative, and really the essence of the compression gap.
Which is
That one person also inherits the cognitive responsibility of those 3 people.
oh, wow.
Think about it. In a traditional structure, you had a strategist who spent their entire week deeply analyzing market positioning. You had a copywriter who obsessed over the nuances of brand voice. And you had a manager who verified the alignment between the two.
So the labor was distributed.
The labor was distributed, but more importantly, the cognitive load and the judgment were distributed.
But now you were doing all of it simultaneously.
Yeah.
You are compressing the entire vertical into one brain.
Exactly. And while the software has wildly scaled your ability to generate output, it has done absolutely nothing to scale your capacity for judgment.
That makes so much sense. Humans have a finite capacity for high-level decision-making in a given day.
We do. There's a limit.
So when you use AI to scale your production by 10x, you are simultaneously scaling the number of micro-decisions you must verify by 10x.
And that's where things break down.
The workload hasn't necessarily crushed you because typing is fast, but the cognitive burden of verifying an avalanche of probabilistic text absolutely will.
It is a massive asymmetry. We scaled the noise, but our internal filter remained exactly the same size.
Think about what happens to an editor who has to review 50 articles a day instead of 5.
They burn out.
Right. By article 30, they are barely reading. They are just skimming for catastrophic errors. Their judgment degrades under the sheer volume of the output.
And that degradation of judgment is the exact vulnerability that AI introduces into a business system.
Yeah.
You are overloaded with decisions you cannot realistically evaluate.
Yeah.
You're managing systems whose underlying logic you don't fully comprehend, and you're producing results that, deep down, you know you haven't properly vetted.
We accidentally transitioned our careers. We went from being specialized thinkers to being full-time quality assurance managers for an untrusted, high-volume employee.
That is exactly what happened. And when you are a fatigued QA manager staring at a fire hose of content, your standards inevitably slip.
You start taking shortcuts.
You have to, just to survive the volume.
Which brings us to the conversation around AI slop. This is the term everyone uses to describe the internet right now. We see it in search results, on LinkedIn, in our inboxes. This flood of low-quality, generic, soulless content.
It's everywhere.
It's technically readable, but it contains absolutely zero unique insight, just pure slop.
The focus on slop is natural, but our sources point out that it is actually a massive distraction.
A distraction? How so?
Well, the technology is always going to produce a certain percentage of garbage. That is a given in any probabilistic system. The true breakdown in this paradigm does not happen inside the server farm.
Where does it happen?
The breakdown happens in a tiny, almost imperceptible micro moment inside the human brain.
Oh, interesting.
It happens in the exact second that a human being looks at an output, feels the weight of that compression gap we just talked about, and accepts the output unchallenged simply because it sounded correct.
Because it sounded right. Wow. That shifts the responsibility completely. We all want to blame the LLM for ruining the internet, but the LLM cannot publish anything on its own.
Exactly. A human has to click the button.
The problem isn't the existence of unchallenged outputs. The problem is our willingness to let them pass.
If we look at the cognitive science behind this, it is highly predictable. Our brains are biologically wired to conserve energy by seeking the path of least resistance.
We're lazy by design.
Efficient by design, let's say. When you are suffering from decision fatigue and you are presented with a document that utilizes impeccable grammar, authoritative formatting, bold headers, structured bullet points.
It looks so professional.
Right. Your brain experiences a cognitive illusion. It conflates structural coherence with factual accuracy and strategic depth.
That is wild. It looks at the neat packaging and concludes, well, the formatting is flawless, therefore the underlying ideas must be sound.
It's the halo effect, applied to typography and syntax.
The halo effect of typography. It reminds me of the dynamic you see when someone is completely out of their depth in a conversation.
How do you mean?
Let's say you are talking to a highly credentialed academic at a dinner party, and they start explaining a complex economic theory using dense, specialized jargon,
Right.
even if you don't truly understand the mechanics of what they are saying. Their delivery is so confident and their vocabulary is so precise that you just find yourself nodding along.
Oh, we've all done that.
You nod to avoid looking foolish, and you accept their premise purely based on their tone of authority. I feel like the AI is doing the exact same thing.
It absolutely is.
It is speaking to us with the unearned confidence of an expert, and because we are tired, we just nod along to the machine.
That is a highly accurate parallel because confronting the academic requires immense intellectual energy. You have to stop them, admit your lack of understanding, and force them to explain their foundational premises.
Which is embarrassing and exhausting.
Exactly. It is much easier to just nod. Similarly, challenging the AI requires you to re-engage the very cognitive friction you were trying to avoid by using the tool in the first place.
So you take the path of least resistance.
Yes, you accept the perfectly formatted strategy because it uses the right corporate buzzwords. You nod along.
And I guess in isolation, that one moment of nodding along doesn't seem like a disaster. You think, I'll just use this one generic intro paragraph. It saves me 10 minutes, no big deal.
Right, one paragraph seems harmless.
But the sources are emphatic that this behavior doesn't stay isolated. It compounds.
It compounds rapidly, and it fundamentally alters your behavioral patterns.
How does it alter them?
Every time you accept an output without applying pressure to it, you are reinforcing a neural pathway. You are training yourself that the process is generate, accept, move on.
Generate, accept, move on.
And human habits, especially ones that conserve energy, bleed into every aspect of our work.
So it doesn't just stay in the intro paragraph. It spreads to the core value proposition of your product.
Yes.
It bleeds into how you position yourself in the market, how you communicate with your team, how you solve complex logistical problems.
Exactly. And this results in what the sources identify as the cognitive shift.
The cognitive shift.
Because you are continually relying on a machine that operates strictly on statistical averages, and because you are no longer injecting your own unique cognitive friction to bend those averages toward your specific reality.
Everything starts to look the same.
Everything you touch slowly begins to regress to the mean. Your ideas become slightly generic, your problem solving becomes slightly predictable.
And if your business output is generic and predictable, in a market where execution is effectively free, you become completely replaceable.
You do.
This is the moment where this ceases to be a philosophical debate about productivity tools and becomes a literal survival crisis for businesses and creators.
It is a survival crisis.
If you stop building direction and default to reacting to outputs, you undergo a massive shift in your operational identity.
You transition from deciding to selecting.
From deciding to selecting. Let's spend some time on this distinction because the difference between deciding and selecting seems subtle on the surface, but the downstream implications are just staggering.
They are. The distinction comes down to agency and boundaries. Selecting is a fundamentally passive act.
Okay.
When you select, you are picking from a menu that someone else, or in this case, something else, has already designed. The options are predefined, the boundaries of possibility are already set, and the underlying assumptions are locked in.
You're just choosing from what's in front of you.
Right. You just point and say, I'll take option B because it looks the least objectionable.
Right.
Deciding, on the other hand, is an active generative process. Deciding requires you to know what outcome you actually need, regardless of what is currently presented on the menu.
So deciding comes from within.
It does. It requires you to set the direction from within, based on your unique context.
Selecting is ordering from the drive-thru. Deciding is walking into the kitchen and telling the chef exactly what ingredients you want.
Perfect analogy. And when a leader or a creator spends their days just selecting from AI-generated menus, the damage isn't immediately catastrophic.
It's not like the business blows up.
Right. If you make a terrible decision, your business might blow up overnight. You see the failure and you learn from it. But selecting doesn't cause explosions.
What does it cause?
It causes something far more insidious. It causes the business to drift.
Drift. That's a scary word in business. It implies a total lack of friction, but also a total lack of control.
Drift is dangerous precisely because it mimics the sensation of progress.
What do you mean?
If you are in a boat with no hand on the tiller but the current is moving, you still feel the wind in your face.
You feel like you're going somewhere.
Exactly. The engine is running, you are publishing content, you are sending out roadmaps, you are checking off tasks on your project management software. From the outside, the organization looks highly active.
That no one is steering.
There is no internal navigation. You are simply being carried by the current of average statistically probable outputs.
And because you are still moving, you can go months or even years without realizing you are completely off course. You just slowly lose your edge, one perfectly formatted, unchallenged bullet point at a time.
That's the reality for a lot of companies right now.
So the obvious question becomes, how do we break the cycle of drifting? Because the reflex in the modern workplace, especially in the tech sector, is to assume that every problem is just a missing feature.
Oh, always. It's always a software problem.
Right. If my AI output is too generic, the assumption is that I must be using the wrong prompt. I need a mega prompt. I need to chain 5 different agents together. I need to upgrade to the newest enterprise model.
Which completely misdiagnoses the root cause of the drift. The source material is unequivocal on this point. More tools, more complex workflows, and advanced prompt engineering will never fix a broken internal process.
Because it's not a tool problem.
Because the failure point isn't the capability of the large language model. The failure point is the human's posture toward the model.
The human's posture. If your baseline cognitive posture is accept first, question later, it doesn't matter if you are interacting with a basic chatbot or an artificial general intelligence. You will always accept the path of least resistance.
Precisely. If you maintain that posture, you will continually create vastly more content than you can responsibly validate. You will be buried under the rework, and your judgment will eventually collapse under the volume.
Not because the AI failed you.
Not at all. Because you voluntarily abdicated the thinking layer.
So the turning point isn't a software upgrade. It's a psychological upgrade.
Yes.
And this is where the framework and the source material really challenges our current norms. We have been conditioned to treat AI as a fragile oracle.
A fragile oracle, yes.
We tiptoe around it, crafting these incredibly polite, highly detailed prompts, trying to coax the perfect answer out of it without offending its logic. The sources suggest a complete inversion of that dynamic.
It requires a radical shift in how you view the tool. You must stop treating the AI as a generator of truth and start treating it as a highly capable adversary.
An adversary. You want to actively antagonize the system you're using to work.
Antagonize is perhaps the wrong word. Interrogate is better.
Interrogate. Okay.
It begins with changing the fundamental questions you ask yourself the moment the AI finishes generating an output. Currently, the default human response to an AI generation is to look at it and ask, is this good? Or can I use this?
Right. Can I copy and paste this into an email and go to lunch?
Exactly. And those questions are inherently biased toward acceptance. They are subconsciously looking for permission to stop thinking and move on.
They want the answer to be yes.
The adversarial shift requires you to replace those questions. Instead, you ask, where does this logic break? And would this assumption survive real-world pressure?
Where does this break?
Well,
it forces you out of the passive consumer mindset and turns you into an active investigator.
You are no longer scanning the document for reasons to approve it.
You are hunting for its structural weaknesses.
You are intentionally implementing a system that protects your own cognitive friction. You are demanding that the machine prove its logic against your specific reality.
And this doesn't necessitate adopting some rigid, bureaucratic, multi-step corporate review process for every single email, right?
No, not at all. It is a mental framework based on 3 actions: interruption, contradiction, and reconstruction.
Interruption, contradiction, reconstruction. Let's walk through what that actually looks like in practice.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you are purposely trying to break the toy you just asked the machine to build.
You are. Let's look at contradiction as an applied method. Suppose you are a product manager and you ask the AI to draft a go-to-market strategy for a new feature.
Okay, pretty standard.
It gives you a highly plausible standard launch plan. The user mindset accepts it, but the adversarial mindset reads it and then immediately prompts the AI again.
What do they prompt it with?
They say. Now, act as a deeply skeptical venture capitalist who believes this specific market is already saturated. Attack the 3 weakest assumptions in the strategy you just wrote.
Oh, that is fascinating. You are forcing the model to red team its own statistical averages.
Exactly. You interrupt the flow of easy acceptance. The AI will inevitably expose the generic nature of its first output by pointing out flaws.
Like what?
Perhaps it assumed a customer acquisition cost that is entirely unrealistic for your specific niche. By forcing the model to find the flaws, you are forced to re-engage your own situational awareness.
You look at the VC critique and realize, it missed our unique distribution channel. I need to fix that.
And that realization is the reconstruction phase. You take the raw, average material, break it apart to find the weak points, and rebuild it intentionally using your proprietary knowledge.
You are doing the hard thinking again, but you're doing it with massive leverage.
The AI is no longer doing the thinking for you. It is providing a highly responsive foil for your thinking.
It's a sparring partner.
Exactly.
If you step into the ring with a sparring partner and just let them dictate the pace and land every punch, you aren't training, you're just getting beaten up.
Right, you're not learning anything.
You have to push back, anticipate their moves, and force them to react to your strategy in order to make yourself stronger.
That is the exact dynamic required. And this practical distinction between the passive acceptor and the active interrogator is what the sources argue will divide the modern workforce into two entirely distinct economic camps.
Two camps. What are they?
The users and the operators.
Users versus operators. Given everything we've discussed, I want to paint a very clear picture of what a user looks like in the wild. The user is the person who is completely consumed by the compression gap, correct?
Yes. The user's underlying methodology is generate fast, accept quickly, attempt to fix the collateral damage later.
They're the ones sprinting on the treadmill, sweating profusely, but never changing the scenery.
Sweating over edits.
Exactly. They are deploying automated agents, writing hundreds of generic posts, sending thousands of slightly off outreach emails. They feel incredibly productive because their output metrics are off the charts.
But their actual impact is plummeting.
Because everything they produce is a diluted version of the mean.
Yeah.
They are scaling noise.
Scaling noise is the perfect distillation of the user. Now, contrast their daily reality with that of the operator.
The operator. This is the person who maintains the friction. The tools are exactly the same, right? They both have the same enterprise licenses, the same foundational model.
The software is completely identical. The divergence is entirely in the methodology. The operator's core process is test outputs aggressively, break underlying assumptions, and rebuild the structure intentionally before ever deploying it.
So while the user scales noise, the operator scales clarity.
Exactly. And this brings us to a crucial macroeconomic point that the sources imply. We are rapidly transitioning into a phase of the economy where execution is entirely commoditized.
Execution is cheap.
Output is infinitely abundant. Literally anyone with a smartphone can generate 1,000 lines of code, a comprehensive business plan, or a week's worth of marketing copy in an hour.
And basic economics tells us that when supply becomes infinite, the value of that supply drops to zero. When output is everywhere, output is no longer a competitive differentiator.
Precisely. The baseline has been raised, which means true, unique differentiation is becoming incredibly rare. The new premium in the marketplace isn't raw production capability.
What is?
It is the ability to apply rigorous, context-specific judgment. The competitive advantage is how well you can think under the pressure of infinite noise.
Wow.
The operator is immensely valuable, not because they know a secret prompt, but because they are the only ones maintaining control of the thinking layer.
They are the ones injecting the nuanced human reality that the stochastic machine cannot access.
The value isn't in the generation. The value is in the verification.
Because the pressure we face today isn't the pressure of a blank page or a lack of time. The pressure is the overwhelming flood of plausible-sounding, beautifully formatted garbage.
And the intense psychological temptation to just click accept and go home early?
That temptation is the most significant professional risk of this decade.
I really believe that.
Which brings us to a very quiet, very grounded reality check. For everyone listening right now, I want you to mentally step back from this conceptual discussion and look at your actual day today.
Think about the very last thing you created using an AI tool.
It might have been an email response to a client, a project update, a piece of code, or just a social media post. Just picture that specific output in your head.
And ask yourself with total honesty, did you genuinely challenge that output? Or did you accept it simply because it sounded right?
Did you look at that wall of text, see the bullet points, and interrogate the assumptions? Or did you just nod your head, take the path of least resistance, and paste it into your workflow?
Because if you continually default to the latter, the danger isn't the sci-fi trope of a machine coming to take your physical job.
No, the real risk is far more subtle and deeply personal. The risk is the slow atrophy of your own judgment.
The risk is that you voluntarily surrender your cognitive agency to a statistical model. You won't stop working. In fact, your metrics might show you are producing more than ever.
But inside, you will stop trusting your own production.
And the moment you lose trust in your own outputs, a silent cascade of professional decay begins. Your ability to make decisive choices slows down.
Your internal conviction in your own expertise drops.
Because you haven't actually exercised that expertise in months. You've just been selecting from menus. Ultimately, major opportunities will be delayed or missed entirely, not because the market shifted, but because you lost the internal clarity required to act decisively.
You lost control of your cognitive process.
It is a sobering realization.
It really is. We spent the last few years worrying about artificial intelligence becoming sentient and overpowering us, when the actual immediate threat was that it would simply make us voluntarily passive.
We outsourced the friction, and in doing so, we outsourced our edge.
But the crucial takeaway here is that you don't have to radically blow up your life to fix this. You don't need to throw your laptop in a dumpster and go back to a typewriter.
Not at all. You simply need a mechanism to make your own internal process visible to yourself. You need a way to catch your brain in that micro moment of acceptance and force a manual override.
Exactly. You don't need a massive theoretical textbook. If anything we talked about today felt eerily familiar, if you recognize that deep exhaustion, that sensation of drifting through your tasks, or that subtle habit of just nodding along to whatever the AI spits out, there's a very practical, immediate way to test your own workflow.
It's not about buying a new software suite.
Right. It's a structural framework designed to help you detect weak, probabilistic outputs, force them to break, and rebuild your ideas so you retain total control.
It is the operational difference between remaining a user and becoming an operator.
So if you want to see how this adversarial approach actually functions in practice, and you want to find out if you are still the one doing the deep thinking, or if you've quietly become just a tired manager approving things, there's a short framework available right now.
It's a great tool.
It is linked in the description below. The URL is start.upgrades-in-conscience.com. You can pull it up, apply it to the very next task on your desk, and see firsthand how it forces a shift in your perspective.
It is an essential step toward reclaiming your judgment in an environment designed to bypass it. And as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, very practical thought to mull over as you return to your workflow.
What's that?
The next time you open a prompt window, hit enter, and watch a perfectly formatted, highly confident screen of text appear in 3 seconds. Pause. Look at it and ask yourself, is this actually saving me time, or is it just quietly spending my judgment?
Is it saving your time, or is it quietly spending your judgment? We will let you sit with that. Until next time, stay curious and keep pushing back on the machine.